Welcome to Isis in the Bible, the Spring Gathering Week T0 Part 2, Ritual. The question for today is, which is stronger, a physical ritual or spirit ritual? Can you notice that the word ritual is in the word spiritual? So the question becomes, do you need machines to heal, or we do it with our own machine called our body, but better yet, using the light of our own imagination? We did not go through the short presentation last week, so we're still using T0 Part 2 as we count our way up to the spring session starting Wednesday, May 8th. Glad you could join us. So last week we spoke about, can you feel the freedom? And we did go around the room that day and we had some amazing responses because people are feeling the freedom, because wisdom is its own reward. It is its freedom when you know that you are a god, you are a goddess, and you're infinite. And so we're still going to talk a little bit about the Mount Sinai that we're going to talk last week, and we got a couple more slides. So I just wanted to bring up about April 14th, which was when the mother met with the sun, and she's now slowly moving around the zodiac. She's only like at a half a degree Aries, because when she was at 0 degree Aries, that would have been the Phoenix rising. But what's brilliant is that so many mothers I noticed around me that were coming out of the woodwork saving their sons, their daughters, their kids. One in particular was a brother who felt a wave, and the medical industry, doing a measuring of the physical, decided to give him an untrue label to that young man, to which he was hanging on to. We don't need those labels. His mother and him reached out to me the night before Easter, the true Easter, on April the 14th. And I made him feel better because I told him it's in his chart. It's just a wave. And I explained to him how he's infinite and he's tethered to pure love, and don't wear what the medical industry is telling you. Don't wear those labels. So he felt incredible. They both were crying. Not that I wanted them to cry, but they were crying in gratitude. And there's everything right with him. So that's the thing. We got to realize now, but I did ask him, I said, is there somebody that you need to ask for forgiveness? And he said he has a whole long list. I said, there you go. So for the next wave, if you do your forgiveness process, the next wave will be beautiful. It won't be as challenging, so to speak. And another friend, they can't find anything with his feelings. He keeps getting in his chest. Again, they use physical to diagnose, but they don't use the metaphysical or what's happening in the stars and the charts. So again, some key dates. April the 20th was when Uranus, the ones that holds up the sky, holding up the worlds of others, and Jupiter met. Jupiter is law. Well, it's just interestingly enough that on that day, somebody else set up a meeting. Well, I set up the meeting, but they picked the day, and it was that day, and we got together, and what were we doing? Discussing law and holding up other people's worlds, helping people that are losing their homes, helping people that don't have money, and stopping the people that are taking monies that shouldn't be taking them. So that was there. We're going to talk about the 40 days. We'll get to that. But what's important about May the 1st, although it's going to be our first week of our spring session, and I might have to punt that one, I don't know, because my son's getting his house that day, so we may be having that meeting on our first meeting on the 8th instead of the 1st, so I'll let you know. But May 1st, Jupiter ends into Taurus. get ready for one of two banking systems to start the collapse. There's two banking systems. There's the usury and there's the de jure one. The usury one is profit that goes away. That's the fall of Babylon, stealing from each other, the sin. So that's going to start happening. I'm not saying it's happening on that day, but you're going to start noticing the signs because we already know that what's happening in the world with people holding up people's worlds as respect to law. So Jupiter moves into Taurus, which is the bull, which is in the front of the stock market. And many women are raising up the divine feminine. The matriarchal system is already showing its face. Last night on the full moon, where was I at? In a room full of people. The room full of people talking law, holding up other people's worlds, wanting to make sure that these lost brothers and sisters, the prodigal sons who are out there spending like crazy and taking from each other, they get to go away. So May 1st is important. That's the start of it. And then Uranus moves into Taurus on June the 30th. So I'll keep bringing these up so we can watch. Because it's all going to fold. Remember, you don't have to run out and go buy gold or silver or anything else because the de jure treasury holds all the tax dollars you've ever spent in your whole life, and you'll get access to that. Use it wisely. So a little bit about Mount Sinai. There's no coincidence in life. Sister Karen sends me this discovery that Mount Sinai is referenced in the Bible to be Saudi Arabia. So I want to talk about this letter of Paul. It's a letter to the Galatians. Paul uses an allegory involving Hagar, Sarah, and Mount Sinai to contrast the old and new covenants. He equates Hagar, the slave woman. Now you got to understand what the slave woman is, because these are all stories from the Tanakh, which is off of the Egyptian walls. The slave woman is Isis, aka Mary, who's in the underworld. In other words, she's from the love portion, but she has to come into the light. So she's slave, she's bound and chained, she can't help us until she comes back into the visible. And Mount Sinai, so the slave woman in Mount Sinai in Arabia with the old covenant of the law, which he views as a form of slavery because it binds adherents to an unfulfillable standard, leaving them in sin and judgment. So the people who've been running our world, what have they been doing? Allowing us to stay in a karmic debt, coaching us, I should say more like tempting us. Conversely, Sarah, the free woman, this is Isis, aka Mary, come back to save her children, represents a new covenant of grace, promising freedom and salvation. This allegory is used to emphasize that we are children of the divine feminine, aka love, and no longer bound by man's law, but now live in the freedom granted through her grace. This is what's happening, folks. This is the story of the metaphysical flood that is shown on the testament of the River Nile flooding each year. And then she comes in and her retrograde motion starts going exactly the same time, which points to the clock of her return. So I'm going to go through these couple of verses and point to you what's happening around the world. So watch how this misinterpretation is exactly saying what's happening in the world right now. What I'm saying is that as long as an heir is underage, he is no different from a slave, although he owns the whole estate. So we've been in karmic bondage 2,000 years, and we're a slave to the system, but we own the whole estate. And that's what I was talking about, where all your tax dollars, the slavery system that they've used to take our tax dollars, they've never been spent. They're sitting there in a fund. The heir is subject to guardians and trustees until the time set by their father. But this is really when it's set by spirit. So also when you were underage, we were in slavery under the elemental spiritual forces of the world. We're talking about karma. But when the set time had fully come, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. This can be reworded, because it's the woman who's come back to save the gods and goddesses, us. So it goes on to talk about how you're no longer going to be a slave, and that's what's happening to us now. But with that comes the revelation of the wisdom and the knowledge of who you really are. So these things have been taken figuratively. The woman represents two covenants. One covenant is from Mount Sinai and bears children who are to be slaves. This is Hagar. Now Hagar stands for Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present city of Jerusalem because she is in slavery with her children. This is in the Bible, folks. But the Jerusalem that is above is free, and she is our mother, for it is written, "Be glad, barren woman, you who never bore a child." So they're talking about Mother Mary, Virgin Mary, Isis, Eris, whatever you want to call her, that pure essence, that pure love that's never been on earth. "Shout for joy and cry out loud, you who were never in labor, because more are the children of the desolate women than of her who has a husband." So what they're talking about is Eris. They're talking about Isis. They're talking about Madonna, not a literal one. It's pure love they're talking about. So we went through this a couple of weeks ago, and we'll continue to follow it because 40 days after the eclipse is important, because it's just another way of measuring the clock. We found the Holy Grail, folks. The Holy Grail is when you realize it's you, Jesus. You're on the stations of the cross, and the mother just met with you. So Rev Cat asked today if we can look at the relationship Passover for the year 2024, which starts on the evening of Monday, April 22nd, so 2 days ago, and ends the 7-day festival at sunset on Monday, April 29th. So we're going to ask people's opinions on this, what they think, but this is what we know for a fact, because when this beautiful brother, German Torres, anyway, this whole thing saying these 40 days after the eclipse, well, when you look 40 days after the eclipse, because this inner ring is the eclipse, 40 days later, the moon aligns with the south node. So it's a clock. They were always measuring the clock. What clock are they measuring? I think you guys know what clock they're measuring, right? So this is remember the cobra marks the head of north and node. So they use the eclipses as the clock, not just the moons, the eclipse cycles, to know when Mother Mary comes home. And remember, she was aligned with Mercury at that time on the eclipse, which is the one that has your report card. The principal with the report card is meeting with Mother. That's what happened on that eclipse. Okay. A couple of verses from the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, about Passover. The Lord, Passover, begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. On the 14th day of the first month, the Lord's Passover is to be held. Well, remember what Lord means, right? Oh, that's Isha. That's ruling goddess. That's Rab, R-A-B-B, in the Quran. We know that, I've done this with AI, if you guys can remember. Does Rab equal Lord? Yes. Does Isha equal ruling goddess? Yes. Well, putting the two together, that means Rab equals ruling goddess, right? Does Isha equal Lord? Yes. So the ruling goddess, Isis, that beautiful, loving, divine woman, energy, essence, whatever you want to call her, they're measuring Passover. They're measuring all these new moons so they can count the cycles of the eclipses. The Arabic word for feather is Risha. You can see Isha in there. It denotes the feather of a bird. Well, we understand feathers, don't we? Okay, so in the Tanakh, so this is the Hebrew Bible, which all Bibles stem from, by the way. Every single one of them stem from this. The explanation of the calendar adjustments. You might note that the Hebrew calendar uses intercalary months, an added month of Adar 2 in 7 of every 19 to keep the lunar calendar in sync with the solar year. So they're playing with 19 years. And I'm going to show you how Eris's return is related to the 19 years. So here's all the things so what they were doing is they're just tracking the different moons so they can look at the eclipse cycle so they can know when Eris, Isis, Madonna, Mektakawada, whatever you want to call her, when she returns. So the Tanakh was created from the Egyptian walls, which has been misinterpreted at that time as well as throughout the last 2,000 years. The whole Egyptian walls is about you, your stations on the cross, and when Mother comes home to check up on you. You may remember seeing this before. But the 558-year cycle and the Saros cycle is 18.6 years. They don't have it right. They use 18.1 or something like that. But when you start taking 7 moons off, 6 moons off, you start what you get from 19 years, you get 18.6 years. So if you go grab an app and you start watching 30 cycles of these north and south nodes, they align with Eris. So Passover, all these different things, all these different rituals and feasts they're talking about are just celebrations that we're keeping track of when Mama comes home. So it's Mary's clock, the mother of God's clock. When she comes home to see what the gods have been doing with the light. What are you doing with your imagination? The dark cleanses the light. The dark is pure energy, pure love. And so it cleanses those lights that have not been used in a loving way. So let's get out the forgiveness tools. Remember, it does not work unless you say, forgive me first, right? You got to say, forgive me. This is shared by brother Alfredo. We're going to look at this beautiful image. As you can see, look who's up top with the moon. I love it, right? And this must be the king. Look, he's holding the crystal ball, kind of like Salvatore Mundi and Leonardo da Vinci. Immortality is above, light is above, harmony is above, peace, beauty, and all that is pure and subtle is above. But why should all that not become incarnate below on the physical plane? And first and foremost, in our physical bodies. Why should the life of the celestial sphere above not impregnate our physical bodies? Why should its radiance not shine through us? Of course it does. When this comes to pass, then yes, the kingdom of God, your kingdom, because you're God, will come, and each one of us will be a lamp, a sun, a source. In your prayers and meditations, therefore, call on the light, the spirit, divine power, call on it and picture it flowing into you and impregnating every atom in your body. And when you have worked with this method for years, one day you will feel that heaven, light, and love have filled your being. When this happens, it will be far easier for you to stimulate others along the same lines, in other words, induce them with love, and far easier also to help them on their way. When the spirit was impregnated matter here below, then the fruit of their union, the child will be born, and the child is the God of that kingdom. That's the way that should be written in all its beauty. The true meaning of Christ's teaching, which is in the Bible. Again, I just wanted to bring up where many people are holding up other people's worlds. If you want to see what's on We the People Constitutional Conventions on Rumble, please feel free. And we join every night at 9 p.m. And there's all kinds of interesting guests that come on and talk about law and how they're holding up other people's worlds. You're more than welcome to attend.